Alright, should be. Yep, we are recording for the fourth part of Chapter 5 in The Princess Bride, which I have labeled Vizzini, because it is when Wesley challenges Vizzini, and we do ultimately get to the reveal that the man in black is Wesley, which does go a bit different than in the movie. Yeah, gonna mark that so I can potentially read some of it. And it also, we now have Humperdinck arriving. The final, 2 pages is Humperdinck trying to catch up on the trail. So, I'm just trying to... No, it starts with, Vizzini has laid out the picnic from a knapsack that he always has with him. This hasn't been mentioned before, but it's one of those things that it can be annoying. Well, stuff like that can be annoying in stories, where it's like suddenly they have something with them. But it depends. In this, I'm okay with it because even though I don't recall it ever being mentioned before, it's not unreasonable that he has it. And it's Vizzini's knapsack. So the fact that he has with him handkerchief that he can put over the table, goblets or glasses, whichever you want to call it, and wine and cheese and apples, that's actually not unreasonable that he would have that, or anyone would have that. So I'm okay with that. I'm just, not that I want to bring it back to Star Wars, but going back to Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, one of the things that I am so annoyed about in that is how Luke and Han on their Tauntauns should have had equal equipment, because there's no reason Han had anything special when he went out to search for Luke. So Luke leaving the Wampa's cave, abandoning his equipment there, meant he also abandoned his best chance at survival with that equipment, and also just being in the cave. I mean, it's one of those things that's part of how The Empire Strikes Back is actually really dumb. The book, at least, that just what is described in there is the characters are dumb. Anyhow, so he does that, and some of a lot is the same as in the movie, but some of it is definitely different. Mainly, I want to say it's just like it more is said, more spoken. Oh yeah, there is that actually. No, I take that back. I do want to talk about that. So, okay. So, for one thing, you do have the whole "you wish to take what I have rightfully stolen" kind of thing. Well, you wish to kidnap what I have rightfully stolen. You do still have that line, but you also have something after that does help. I mean, Vizzini isn't as smart as as he believes he is. That's critical to his character. But he isn't completely stupid, because he points out the whole, I'm here, my job is to kill her. You, I've deduced, must be a kidnapper, in which case then you wish to ransom her, which means you want her alive. So we cannot possibly do business together. That's how we get we're at an impasse. That line is in the movie, but not the fuller context. And Wesley does try to point out, but if you kill her, then I'll just kill you. But Vizzini then does point out as well, but then we both are out the things we want. You out the ransom, me out of my life. But one thing also, and this occurred to me earlier, I didn't mention that, I'm going to mention it now though. Part of Vizzini's desire to do this job, he wants to start the war because he actually wants to make a business of that, and he feels that it will make him a lot of money if he and Inigo and Fezzik can be hired to start wars, because everyone wants to start a war now and then, don't they? I mean, it's a little bit odd, but there's also the issue of this doesn't help him. All he can actually count on is being paid for this job, because he can't advertise, hey, that war between Florin and Gilder? I started that. Because all it would take then is for it to come back to Gilder and be like, hold on, you did what now? Hey, Florin, why are we fighting? We didn't do anything. They did this. I think we should stop and, execute these guys in very painful ways, don't you think? I mean, he can never say this, so he can't advertise that he did this, but he thinks that, if I do this, then I'll be successful. He can never talk about it. So it is one of those things. Vizzini, you're actually really stupid here. And it previously as well, this occurred to me that he can never talk about this, that what he has done here, if he succeeds, because that undermines his very success. Because he would always have to do this in secret. So, yeah. I mean, it's also kind of the whole, if you're a criminal, you can't admit to your crimes to brag to people. You know, it could only exist as rumor, but for something like, I started a war, it's like, yeah, you can't even allow the rumors to exist. Because if that's the case, then if the people in charge of the countries at war find out, I can believe that they'd be like, hey, can we have a truce for a little bit? I want to drag this guy out here. We're going to find out how much he likes his fingernails versus how much he likes talking to us. You get my drift? And I'm sorry, I think there would be some nations where, like, not to say Humperdinck would be proper here, but, you know, Florin and Gilder makes an offer to Florin and be like, if they were like, hold on, what? You're hearing that? You know, yeah, let's have this truce. Let's see what this little humpback has to say for himself. Because if nothing else, if this is a unnecessary war, then it's like, well, why are we spending the money on it? So anyhow, okay. Nope, I think I'm a little bit ahead of this. Hang on, I do want to read off this, or at least mention it. Oh, sorry, sneeze is starting to build up. There is nothing you can tell me I do not already know. I've not had the schooling equal to some, but for knowledge outside of books, there is no one in the world close to me. People say I read minds, but that is not in all honesty true. I merely predict the truth using logic and wisdom, and I say you are a kidnapper. Admit it. Okay. So to be fair, that is exactly something you can do. Is you just know how to read somebody, so then you are effectively reading their minds. Although how he would have read Buttercups when she was covered earlier in the chapter, that I'm not sure about. I'm saying guessing what she is thinking, that's one thing, but knowing she's even conscious at this point, that I would like explained. Well, if it is to be he's just really good at reading people. But no, mainly what I wanted to read that for was, but for knowledge outside of books, because remember, Wesley read a great deal. He taught himself languages as well, so he is highly intelligent, including from books. Vizzini admits to that not being the case, which I find it somewhat interesting because Inigo and Wesley are both better than master fencers because they worked at that, and in theory, the way they worked may have been comparable. Fezzik doesn't exercise. Okay, Wesley does, but still, they are very strong through their actions. Because even if Fezzik doesn't exercise, it's still, he gets into fights. He knows how to do that. Wesley would know how to fight as well. Whereas Vizzini has not gained his intelligence in necessarily the way Wesley has. I'm just pointing this out as can we read something into that? Is there supposed to be a purpose there that Vizzini is not in some way reminiscent, in some way a reflection, twisted as it is, of Wesley, and that may be part of the reason why he dies? I mean, it is kind of a weird thought and probably isn't right, but to be honest, with some of the stuff, I'm okay with that idea of considering ideas that can be easily dismissed, but you still go through the entire consideration. And you're like, yeah, it's wrong, but still let's figure this out, because sometimes there can be value to the thought, even if it is ultimately to be rejected. And I also do want to and I say you are a kidnapper, admit it, I already read that part, but I will admit that as a ransom item, she has value, nothing more. So it is interesting because of the whole, what he's saying here is not false. That if you only consider her as a ransom item, she does have value. And I'm not saying anything more. I'm not admitting anything more. Because one thing that is unclear at this point is what is Wesley's disposition towards Buttercup. Which is definitely, when I get to it, is different in the book than in the movie. But when I get to talking about it, because there is the challenge first, which... So we have Vizzini saying, I cannot compete with you physically, and you are no match for my brains. You are that smart. This much is in the room. There are no words to contain all my wisdom. This is the book. I am so cunning, crafty, and clever, so filled with deceit, guile, and chicanery, such a knave, so shrewd, cagey, yet as well as calculating, as diabolical as I am vulpine, as tricky as I am untrustworthy. Well, I told you there were not words invented yet to explain how great my brain is, but let me put it this way. The world is several million years old, and several billion people have at one time or another trod upon it. But I, Vizzini the Sicilian, am, speaking with pure candor and modesty, the slickest, sleekest, slyest, and wiliest fellow who has yet come down the pike. He is so full of himself. Also, one other thing I want to mention, how he calls himself Vizzini the Sicilian. It's Fezzik the Turk, Inigo the Spaniard. We don't have a last name for Wesley, don't have a last name for Buttercup, don't have a last name for Humperdinck. Count Rugen, I'm actually not sure if that is his last name. In any case, one thing that occurred to me when reading that is when I tried, and I got a decent way into, but I did not finish. That's coming up on a decade ago when I tried to read through Don Quixote. One thing that was mentioned in the introduction for the copy I was reading was that it was written by Miguel de Cervantes. Is the day in there? Well, Cervantes at least is there. And it was just explaining that yes, that name is in fact from the Cervantes Mountains where his father's estate was, his father's home was. So his father took it first. Because last names are actually kind of new in the grand scheme of things. In some ways, it depends. Because, yes, you did have in ancient Rome people actually having first, middle, and last names, unless you were a slave. Then typically you didn't have the middle name. But if you were a slave who's freed, you wouldn't get a middle name, but your children would then have a middle name. Anyway, but it is in fact Cervantes for the mountains there because, hey, people are taking on last names. You would take the name of like where you're from. So I do just find it interesting that this. I mean, it is a book. It is a fictional story. You don't need to worry about last names if you don't have to worry about them. I do sometimes worry about that because I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of used to it, and it helps provide some sort of distinction. And plus, you can do some fun stuff with last names as well. But yeah, so Vizzini the Sicilian, as though he doesn't have a last name, but this is just how you would name him, how you would identify him. Kind of like how, to use one example that some people would probably note that, yes, I've heard it that way, is Jesus of Nazareth. That's how you identify that it is that Jesus or Yeshua, because that's what the actual original name would have been, versus from somewhere else. Or son of Joseph you would have in there, or son of Mary, depending. So that's how you would identify them, by those relations, rather than a last name, because they didn't necessarily have them then. Although that is kind of funny, because technically Rome had them. Now I am legitimately wondering if the Israelites had a practice of last names at all back then, or if it was just those relations. But I need to stop thinking about that and focus on the book. This is why I ramble, okay? My mind just starts going places and asking questions. Anyway. So it's the whole battle of wits. It goes very similar to what is in the movie. Not quite. As far as what is said back and forth, a lot of it is the same, but then some of it definitely does deviate. Yeah, we do have, you guess. Where's the poison? Wesley saying this. Guess? I don't guess. I think. I ponder. I deduce. Then I decide, but I never guess. The battle of wits has begun. So we had that line cut out. It ends when you decide and we drink the wine and find out who is right and who is dead. We both drink, need I add, and swallow naturally at precisely the same time. Again, cut out because need I add, even points out there. One thing, though, that I've always found a little odd is the idea that Vizzini needs to trick him. I mean, even in the movie, I get it, but it's also like, the whole premise is Vizzini is actually picking the glass. is that Vizzini can decide, well, I want the one in front of you, and then they have to swap. It's not as though it's like Vizzini says, well, I think you put the poison in my glass, therefore I must drink it. It's so I always find it odd, the whole what's over there. But we do get the whole back and forth. You're stalling, and Vizzini continuing to say whatever, passing time, potentially to try to provoke some reaction he can read. And it actually does describe. I don't care for the specific use of word. Here, I don't care for that. It's not incorrect, but I think that there would be a better way of giving it. But it does say the man in black was starting to get nervous. The man in black was very nervous now. You're trying to make me give something away with all this chatter, said the man in black angrily. Well, it won't work. You'll learn nothing from me, that I promise you. I have already learned everything from you. I know where the poison is. I mean, it's... So that's actually a little bit different. But it's the... Nervous isn't quite the right word, I think. Here. I think anxious would be better. And irritated. That he's not... I don't think Wesley would be getting nervous. Yes. I do not believe Wesley would be getting nervous that, oh, he's going to get it right or something like that. I don't think he's nervous about that because of what he set up. He might be faking it, though, that he's faking nerves. But I think it is more so he's getting anxious. That's like, dude, shut up and just pick the goblet. Stop talking. Let's get to it. But, yeah, I have already learned everything from you. I know where the poison is. Vizzini says, only a genius could have deduced as much. So, this, I think, to speak to Wesley is, in fact, manipulating Vizzini, because only a genius, he's stroking the man's ego. Because doing that enough may actually get him to stop and finally take the drink. How fortunate for you that I happen to be one, said Vizzini, going more and more amused now. You cannot frighten me. Shall we drink then? And then we do have the whole, what in the world can that be? Turned around and looked. I don't see anything. That whole thing. Yeah, they drank. You guessed wrong, said the man in black. You only think I guessed wrong. His laughter ringing louder. That, said the Facilian, his laughter ringing louder. That's what's so funny. I switched glasses when your back was turned. There was nothing for the man in black to say. Fool! You fall victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in the land war in Asia, but only slightly west. Skip it. Speech impediment says no. Moving on. Well known is this. Never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line. He is quite cheery until the iocane powder took effect. I mean, and to be fair, it makes sense to not try to write in here, ha 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 ha. Which, one thing, don't get me wrong, I love the performance. I love all the performances in the movie. The way he ends the laugh, not abruptly, but like it actually shifts in pitch, does annoy me a little bit. Like, I kind of wish he could have just ha ha ha, and just a sudden stop, rather than a ha ha ha, and then he. I mean, whatever. But here it doesn't specifically say there that he until the iocane powder took effect. The man in black stepped quickly over the corpse, then it roughly ripped the blindfold from the prince's eyes. But it does say later, I let him die laughing. So we can, it is like not, they didn't add that in the movie. He was in fact laughing. But one thing I also do want to point out here. Then roughly ripped the blindfold from the prince's eyes. Okay. I let him die laughing, said the man in black. Pray I do as much for you. He lifted her, slashed her bonds away, put her on her feet, started to pull her along. Please, Buttercup said, give me a moment to gather myself. The man in black released his grip. Buttercup rubbed her wrists, stopped, massaged her ankles. She took a final look at the Sicilian to think all that time it was your cup that was poisoned, and then he explains no, it was both. The reason why I wanted to read those portions is because we are in fact seeing here Wesley is being cruel. Is being crueler to her than Fezzik was, at least. Because Fezzik, when he broke the bonds on her ankles, massaged them for her, she didn't need to ask. He did it because he knew she needed to start moving, so he's trying to get the blood flow back. He was doing this out of kindness to her. Wesley is supposed to be in love with her and feeling betrayed by her, so I think that's the key thing here. Is he does have an anger directed towards her because he feels betrayed, and he does want to test her to find out, has she in fact been faithful, or has she actually betrayed him? But he's probably more so biased towards the anger for two reasons I can think of. One is anger can be very tempting as an emotion. It legitimately can be. And two, everything he would have been able to see about her and learn about her since his death would suggest she has betrayed him. Because she has, for years, been in training to be a princess to marry Humperdinck. That's a significant commitment. And has spoken of... Actually, no, I take that back. I'm not sure if she has spoken of... When Humperdinck comes for me, I don't think she's spoken about that yet, that he would have heard. But she does say some of that stuff. And some of that does follow the movie, but... some of that the movie does follow. But yeah. She does have the whole... Again, why is it that, despite spending all these hours with these three men who were openly planning to kill her, she wondered why she was more frightened now than then. Frightened of her. Of Wesley. Well, the man in black, because she doesn't yet know. I will pay you a great deal of money to release me, she managed to say. The man in black glanced at her. You are rich, then? I will be. Whatever you want for ransom, I promise I'll get it for you if you'll let me go. The man in black just laughed. I was not speaking in jest. You promise. You? I should release you on your promise? What is that worth, the vow of a woman? Oh, that is very funny, Highness, spoken in jest or not. So, yeah, he's angry. I think that is definitely there. That he is, or at least these are much sharper and more cutting remarks than you would have for just a commentary on women being fickle or capricious. Because, I mean, there is that stereotype. You can disagree with it. That a woman would just betray, and like, oh, I promise to do this for you, but then once she gets what she wants, just leave. Men are also guilty of that, but I think that there is more so a stereotype of women doing that. And I'm not saying the stereotype is correct. I'm just trying to remember, how many women have I known that have actually been like that? I know I've known one. Have I known others? I may have. It's also been a long time, though, so... But no, I did know one, yeah. But I guess it is also... Yes, I have known one woman that was stereotyped. That was that kind of stereotype. But only one out of... I don't even know how many women I've been friends with throughout my life. And that one was not a friend. I'm just trying to look for where the next point is. And by the way, she is referencing essentially that once I'm married, the prince will pay you whatever you want. So one thing that's interesting is he initially is dragging her along this mountain path. And he is dragging her. And whenever she stumbles, he will basically pull her to her feet. He picks her back up to get her going again. Which, I cannot move this quickly. You can and you will, or you will suffer greatly. Do you think I could make you suffer greatly? She nods, then run. Excuse me. This again seems to be him being cruel to her. But there are also moments a little later when she even notices it is almost as though he knows when she is tired, because he basically runs and then just stops, runs and stops, and it is mentioned later that to her it is like he knows. So maybe that is the part of him that does still love her coming out, and mollifying him, calming him down, assuaging some of the anger. So the anger is likely still dominant, but at some point I could believe it might switch where it's now more the anger being an act, but some of it, no, I think it's safe to say is not. Mm, yeah. Where do you take? Hang on. Let me just check. Do we? Okay. Yeah. He does also at one point take her off the path and through a forest that's very rough, which is very hard for her to get through. Where do you take me? She gasps when he again gave her a chance to rest. Surely even someone as arrogant as you cannot expect me to give an answer. That would be one of those he's likely still pissed at her. Uh, it does not matter if you tell or not, he will find you. He, Highness? Prince Humperdinck, there is no greater hunter. He can track a falcon on a cloudy day. He can find you. You have confidence that your dearest love will save you, do you? Never said he was my dearest love. And yes, he will save me. That I know. You admit that you do not love your husband to be. Fancy. An honest woman. You're a rare specimen, Highness. So again, he is being mean to her. Yeah, the prince and I never from the beginning lied to each other. He knows I do not love him. Are not capable of love is what you mean. I'm very capable of love, Buttercup said. Hold your tongue, I think. I have loved more deeply than a killer like you can possibly imagine. Now, in the movie, he does raise his hand. In this, no, he slaps her. Yeah, he slapped her. That is the penalty for lying, Highness. Where I come from, when a woman lies, she is reprimanded. But I spoke the truth. I did. Buttercup saw his hand rise a second time, so she stopped quickly, fell dead silent. Then they began to run again. Okay. So, one thing that I wrote in the notes, and to be clear, it's a stupid note, but I still wanted to write it out, which is that if you assume that love for one thing can be measured, for another that you assume that they both, when their love started, was at about the same point, and that they grew in a similar way, his love actually would have always been greater than hers, because he loved her before she realized she loved him. Okay? Like the whole, if yours is a grain of sand, mine is a universe of beaches. That whole thing there. So yeah. So it is like, now you are like, technically his point of view could be, well, you are lying even if you don't realize it. Because you don't know who I am. But then we do get to something interesting, which is they arrive at the top of the ravine, so the ravine down there that she ultimately pushes them down. And by the way, this is all still at night. It's all still at night. Daybreak is coming soon, but it's not arrived yet. But while they're up there, they can look out into the channel and they see the Florinese Armada. And this I find interesting because of what is some of the implications of it being there. You must have ordered every ship in Florin after you. Such a sight I have never seen. Yeah. If you release me, I promise that you will come to no harm. You are much too generous. I could never accept such an offer. I offered you your life. That was generous enough. Highness, said the man in black, and his hands were suddenly at her throat. If there is talk of life to be done, let me do it. She has a very good response, but I just want to pause on that, because that is not a statement you expect to see made in many stories. You're offering me my life, and then it's like, I can take yours whenever I wish, and is putting his hands there to do it. And especially when you further sharpen that with the whole, this is the dude who truly loves her and is doing this. That's now true. He isn't actually squeezing, but it still is. If he is still angry with her, this is like peak anger for him, probably. If he is still, maybe he's acting a little bit, but I he would not. Either he is angry, or he has completely conquered that anger. I would say, because if they were a little bit in the middle, I don't think he would trust his discipline to hold back. Like if he were completely angry, I could see him doing that to express his anger, his dominance over her, but he doesn't want to harm her yet. Like his anger at her could turn to harm her, but not yet. It's not the time for that. I think his anger would see that. And then if he were just he actually isn't in complete control of himself, then he could just through discipline be like, do that to just express, I am in control here. Okay, I determine your life now. But I could believe that if he were anywhere in the middle, where there was some anger, that his discipline would instead, but not peak anger, would instead make him not. His discipline would be like, no, don't put your hands out because you might accidentally hurt her. Okay, that his discipline would be like, no, I might make the slip and just kill you now. When, if he is going to give into his anger, he may want something worse for her. Okay, so her response. Well, if there's talk of life to be done, let me do it. You would not kill me. You did not steal me from murderers to murder me yourself. Wise as well as loving, said the man in black. So, well, as loving is potentially mocking her. But that is a wise response. That very much is that it's like, why would you be bothering with this? Why would you not have just killed me if already it was like, clearly you do not mean to actually kill me? And that's part of what I mean in the middle. If he was just angry, well, the anger may lead him to want to hurt her, but I could see being at peak anger is I want you to suffer, whereas anyone in the middle might be I can kill you now. But then also just, if there were no anger, then he could just be disciplined enough to do this. The comment then, he had not expected the armada to be so large. Then he said, I wonder, will he stay in one group or will he divide? Some to search the coastline, some to follow your path on land. What do you think? So at this point, and it might just be he's having conversation with her to figure out what she knows about Humperdinck, how close they are. That's possible. But I do also wonder if he's suspicious about the Armada. That maybe he's actually thinking there's more to this. Because it is also, Vizzini was talking about how we were hired for this. I don't remember if Fezzik and Inigo mentioned anything about that, but Vizzini did. And this was hours ago, technically, but, excuse me, it was recent. So he might be thinking, who hired him? And then it's like, you don't raise an armada to rescue somebody. And if you split it, he might be, well, if it stays together, then it's like, that is absolutely an invasion force, but even splitting it up could still be an invasion force to try to cover more area. He might be thinking, this is not the right response for what's going on here, unless it is meant to invade, unless it is meant for war. So I do wonder that, but right now I have no way to know one way or the other. Yeah, what do you think? I only know he will find me, and if you have not given me my freedom first, he will not treat you gently. Surely he must have discussed things with you, the thrill of the hunt. What has he done in the past with many ships? We do not discuss hunting, that I can assure you. Not hunting, not love, what do you talk about? We do not see all that much of each other. Tender couple. Buttercup could feel the upset coming. We are always very honest with each other. Not everyone can say as much. May I please tell you something, Highness? You're very cold. I'm not. Very cold and very young, and if you live, I think you'll turn to hoarfrost. Why do you pick at me? I've come to terms with my life, and that is my affair. I am not cold, I swear, but I have decided certain things. It is best for me to ignore emotion. I have not been happy dealing with it. Her heart was a secret garden, and the walls were very high. I loved once, Buttercup said after a moment. It worked out badly. And he continues to push, but I do find this interesting that she is actually being somewhat open here. I can think of one reason why, but I don't really want to go with that one. It could just be that this is what you believe would happen. And it is true. She's been so stressed that her defenses might be down a little bit and is just going to open up. But the thing I don't really like as the answer is if she is somehow suspicious. She somehow senses Wesley. And so she is just being honest with him. Or starting to be. But I don't like that. I just... That feels too melodramatic and too... It's not the right word. But too romantic, because that's not... In some ways, I am a romantic for some of the stuff that I write and also some of what I plan to write, but this I would reject. Doing something like that, I would reject. In this context. So, but it is still like a flavor of it, where it's just like that over the top. I'm a romantic in the sense of trying to put forward ideals. And so is kind of an ideal that because of that love that she does still have for him, would just know that it's him. But if that were the case, you do that earlier, okay? That comes up earlier. That even like, just as they're moving together, she recognizes a smell and starts thinking about Wesley for it, and it could even be like, why am I thinking about it? Like you do something like that where it would start revealing just by being in proximity. Because she so loves him, that doesn't matter that it's been years since they last crossed paths, she would recognize him. That would be there. So that's why the reason why I don't like it here, because it would be too much the cliche kind of romantic that is like, you know, a romance novel kind of thing. Well, trashy romance novel, I should say. Or romantic comedy kind of thing, where it's like, that's not technically the same thing as being a romantic or a romance story. I guess maybe a better way to put it is, I'm referring to, when I'm saying I'm a romantic, more like the romance era of music. Which, when people talk, I told you, this is why I ramble. I just, connections, and my brain just goes. But when people refer to classical music, there's actually 3 eras that are being referred to: Baroque, classical, and then Romance. And Romance, well, Beethoven is kind of a transitionary figure from, and because he shows both of classical to Romance. Tchaikovsky is legitimately my favorite composer, and he is definitely Romance. So I would recommend listening to some of that, but also try listening to some Beethoven. You will hear the differences between them, because Beethoven is still classical. Trying to see, one issue is there's also Bach and Mozart, but I can never remember. One is classical, one is Baroque, and I can never remember which is which. I'm gonna guess it's Bach that's classical, because for some reason I'm thinking Mozart with the harpsichord, and harpsichord is very much a Baroque era instrument. Classical, piano's in classical because piano allows for certain dynamics that harpsichord can't, despite how they look similar. They are quite different. But still, after Beethoven was a transitionary figure in this. It's not, the era just isn't a boom, now we changed. No, it took time. But Tchaikovsky is definitely an example of that. And one thing with it is, in classical, there were rules to how symphonies were done. Beethoven started breaking those, like 4 movements to a symphony. Well, he made 5. No singing. Well, he puts a choir in. But it's Beethoven. He's a true master of the work of music, so he can get away with it because it's just so beautiful. You accept it. You allow it. And when you get to somebody like Tchaikovsky, you do have many are 4 movements. He does have 1 or 2 5. The funny thing is, I actually do have. I've been listening to it recently. Yeah, his 3rd symphony has 5 movements to it. But he I think that there is. I don't remember if there is some singing. He actually, one thing, he really liked doing orchestral suites, which I have those. Well, I haven't listened to them for a while. Which the way it was described in the booklet for the orchestral suites, and I know this is quite an aside, um, is that part of the reason why Tchaikovsky liked it is an orchestral suite is basically, yes, you can compose for an entire orchestra, but you're just free to do it. You're not limited to any of these rules. There's no expectations for the rules that that are there for symphonies. Even though, yeah, you can still violate those. It's like, nah, an orchestral suite you can just compose for, and some of those are legitimately so beautiful. Oh. Anyway, trying to come back to the story now. Okay, it worked out badly. So, I loved once, it worked out badly. Another rich man, because Wesley is continuing to provoke her. Another rich man, yes, and he left you for a richer woman? No, poor, and it killed him. Were you sorry? Did you feel pain? Admit that you felt nothing. Do not mock my grief. I died that day, which we do get in the movie. So, potentially at this point, were you sorry? Did you feel pain? I could believe that is a moment when it's like his anger is defeated. That it is, no, she is talking about me, and she is being honest. And so it's like, were you sorry? Did you feel pain? Like he's actually asking her, what did you feel when you heard that news? Like, because he cares about her. Maybe at that moment. But then admit that you felt nothing. Could be either the anger coming back up or him knowing he has to provoke her further. There's not enough there. Because to just leave it at did you feel pain could almost be like, well, we're going to be friends. But no, I have to push. I have to keep pushing. I have to keep pushing. I have to get you angry. I have to get you to break so that you will just yell at me and I will know you're telling me the truth then. Yeah, do not mock my grief. I died that day. Because it's like, he knows when she's saying I died that day, she is telling the truth. He can 100% believe that is the truth from her. He then turns to look back at the Armada, in part because they're firing signal cannons. And while he's watching them, well, the signal cannons were fired so that they change formation. They do split up. Some go north, some go south to basically investigate the coastlines. Humperdinck's ship is going to continue forward. That gets explained a little later. Now, at this point, the similarities to the movie, but a lot are actually different at this point. So she pushes him, and he's like unbalanced, but eventually does fall. Down went the man in black, stumbling and torn and reaching out to stop his descent, but the ravine was so steep and nothing could be done. Down, down, rolling over rocks, spinning out of all control. Buttercup stared at what she had done. Finally, he rested far below her, silent and without motion. So, he's at the bottom now, okay? You can die too for all I care, she said, and then she turned away. Words followed her, whispered from far, weak and warm and familiar. As you wish. So this is quite different from in the movie. Because in the movie, it's like the moment she pushes him, he's saying it and tumbling down, then she tumbles down after him. But no. He's already down there and he's injured. Because it continues. Dawn in the mountains. Buttercup turned back to the source of the sound and stared down as, in first light, the man in black struggled to remove his mask. Okay, so he is injured. He is struggling to achieve this. And don't forget, he technically still has a wounded shoulder and wounded arm and wounded wrist from Inigo. And potentially other bruises and such from having been beaten up by Fezzik. Oh, my sweet Wesley, what have I done to you now? And then, at this point, she starts, from the bottom of the ravine, they came only silence. So it's like, she's saying this potentially for him to respond, but he can't. And she hesitated not a moment to run down. And she does run down, but eventually does lose her balance. Which is nothing. In the movie, it seems more so like just throws herself off the edge to roll down. But it's like, no, she's trying to run down, but lose her balance and ultimately does roll. Okay, at this point, after the cartwheeling toward what was left of her beloved, Then we cut to Humperdinck on the Armada, and it is curious, some of this. We do get a little bit in his head as far as made himself, this was just like any other hunt. He made himself think away the quarry. Did not matter if you were an antelope or a bride-to-be, the procedures held. You gathered evidence, then you acted. You studied, then you performed. If you studied too little, the chances were strong that your actions would also be too late. You had to take time, and so frozen thought he continued to stare up the sheer face of the cliffs of insanity. So, it is going to be interesting to see how this goes later on. There is more that I want to talk about here, but because, remember, we know by virtue of the movie, he's the one behind all this. He's the one that has planned all of it. And there is some stuff in here that kind of aligns with that. But I'm uncertain. I'm basically starting to wonder, is he maybe... Did he create this hunt as well? So that to satisfy himself, because he enjoys the hunt. And maybe he felt that between Inigo, Fezzik, and Vizzini would be a worthy challenge for him. In fact, in a twisted way, that actually makes sense and would solve the whole thing that I was saying with Vizzini being stupid, that he can never share what is done. Because it could be he goes to war with Gilder, achieves something there, but then realizes that it was all a trick. So now he must hunt them down. So now he must defeat the world's greatest swordsman, well, second greatest, but a wizard of the sword in Inigo, defeat the giant Fezzik, and then outwit the genius Vizzini. So it's actually possible that he has set this all up so that he will then kill them, which he would just need to kill Vizzini first, because he's the only one that would know who hired them. He could do that. And then it's like he's just enjoying more of the hunt. He's had his war, he's enjoyed his hunt, and she's dead, so he's free of that concern as well. It's like, I could see that being the case, but I don't know. That would be revealed later, because we're not yet, it hasn't been revealed in the book yet that he's a mastermind. But I do also find it a little odd, because he talks about how, looking at the cliffs, obviously someone had recently climbed them. There are foot scratchings all the way up a straight line, which meant most certainly a rope and arm-over-arm climb up a 1,000-foot rope with occasional foot kicks for balance. But I just find it odd how he then notices that about 300 feet from the top, it gets interesting with foot scratchings being deeper, more frequent, and they didn't follow an ascending line, a direct ascending line. Either someone left the rope 300 feet from the top immediately, which made no sense, or the rope was cut while that someone was still 300 feet from safety. It's like, you don't see the rope here. You see somebody climbed it and the rope is missing. It has to have been cut or untied. You're not dragging that thing back up. All right, 1,000 feet of rope, especially rope strong enough to carry giant Fezzik, Inigo, Buttercup, and Vizzini, that's a heavy rope. That's going to be a strong and heavy rope. So, yeah, you'd have to cut that. And it is also, I'm not sure. Yes, Fezzik did sink the boat that he was. I am uncertain if in the movie we do have there's a little flat portion there that you can stand on with the rope being there, or if it is in fact completely just cliffed to water and they had to get from their boat onto the rope. I'm not sure about that. But if there were a flat piece of land there, then you'd see the rope. And if not, then it still is well, obviously the rope was cut. It just seems odd that he has to, get to the hole at 300 feet up. I can see it's like, the moment he sees anyone was trying to climb down here and the rope is missing, the rope had to have been there. I mean, I just found that a little odd. Because you already had that conclusion. It's just, okay, potentially someone was climbing on it when it was removed. It's more like that's the order of operations here. Anyway. Okay. Does have the whole send half the Armada south, along the coastline, the other north. They should meet by twilight near the fire swamp. Which is convenient because that's where everyone is going to end up being by accident. Our ship will sail to the first landing possible, and you will follow me with your soldiers. He's talking to Rugen. Ready the whites. So the whites are 4 white horses that he is. Of all his accomplishments, none pleased the prince as did these horses. And I'm pretty sure these would be the 4, because we see at the end of the movie, Fezzik does appear with 4 white horses. So it would seem they have taken, that's what they're taking. Someday he would have an army of them, but getting the bloodlines perfect was a slow business. But it's also, he describes it for these, none can beat them, and he actually rides all 4. Where he will ride on one, leading the other 3 with him. But then before the one that is on tires, he goes to the other mid-stride. So that then none of them will ever tire, at least from carrying him. So he can continue much further, which I want to say that is a real thing that people did, but it's not an easy thing. Like, this is actually fairly impressive to be able to move from one horse to another while they're running. But also, it would I would imagine also takes skill, takes experience to be able to recognize this horse is tiring. Well, is going to start tiring soon. I need to move before it does actually tire. He gets to the top and starts examining things. He is confused by something. I'm just looking for where that is so I can read it. Clearly swordsmen were changing hands, but why would a master do that unless his good arm was wounded to the point of uselessness? That clearly had not happened, because a wound of that depth would have left blood spores, and there was simply not enough blood in the area to indicate that. What I've skipped over here, he is freaky. Because he's actually trained himself that he can close his eyes and smell blood within 100 yards. The human sense of smell, though the only sense that is directly connected to the brain, is not really that sensitive. But he manages to pick up blood drops that are already dried. This is the fight was 3 hours ago, and he can smell that. He's kind of scary. Okay? That's weird. But he did it because he loves to hunt. And it does describe that at one point, some sort of large tiger, that he was hunting and actually managed to sneak up on him because he couldn't smell it. He was trusting his eyes to follow a blood trail, but then he realized afterwards, no, I do need to smell so that when it came back, I would know and wouldn't be caught. A lot of it is fairly similar. With the whole, it's like the loser went off that way, the victor that way. Should we follow both? No. We need to follow the victor because that's who would be going after the princess. We don't care about the loser. Whoever is gone is of minimal importance, since whoever has the princess is the whoever we're after. Now, this is also the first time that we do get him referring to this being planned by Gilder. I mean, there is another one later, which technically we don't have a reason to believe that he would think that, aside from it is on Gilder's side of the channel, and potentially also the Gilder cloth, but is, again, one of those whole things of, it's actually not that reason to be like, they wouldn't leave that. If you're abducting them, why would you be in a Gilder uniform? It kind of is a dead giveaway. I do need to wrap this up soon, don't I? The sad thing is about how long this video has been is how much of it is because of my rambling and not because of talking about this. I am sorry about that, but it is how my mind works sometimes. A lot of the time. Continue on to Fezzik, to where he fought, Wesley fought Fezzik, and at this point he's like, she is still alive because I can see a woman's footprints. But Fezzik has left, so again, it's we're not going to follow that. But it is also, the Count can't see some of these, which it's one of two things going on here. Either Humperdinck is that good that he can see these things that no one else is seeing, or he knows the path. Now, excuse me, up until Vizzini, he could very well know the path. He could have told Vizzini, this is where you should kill her. This is where her body should be. So he just needs to know from, okay, here's where the duel was. This is where they got up the cliffs of insanity. I know they're going this way. I just need to follow that direction. But then once he is able to follow Wesley, who drags her through the forest, which at that point, Wesley doesn't know the path. So he does have to track there. But I do just wonder how much of it is he already knows the answer, so it's not that... Because there is a line in here, yeah, following the footsteps that he alone could see, it's like, or footsteps that aren't there, he just knows where they're supposed to be. But this is, that comment is after Vizzini, though. Well, when they're following her after Vizzini. But yeah, there'll be great suffering in Gilder if she dies. So again, he's naming them. I just realized something. My bookmark fell out. It's like, wait a minute, this is where it's supposed to be. Glad I caught that. So now he gets to the ravine, and this confuses him. And I'll be ending this soon, because he realizes that they fell down the ravine. Well, that they went down the ravine. Yeah. Clearly, the kidnapper did not come back up because the climb was too steep. Now, cannons must have let him know that they were closely pursued. And by the way, this is about 2 hours after dawn, which that's when she realized it was Wesley. So 2 hours have passed since then. It's just odd that a man who is a master fencer, a defeater of giants, an expert in the use of iocane powder, would not know what this ravine opens into. And what is that? The fire swamp. Then we have him, said the Count. Precisely so. It was a well-documented trait of his to smile only just before the kill. His smile was very much in evidence now. So, I do wonder... Okay. If I set aside knowing... I have been enjoying this chapter. I enjoy this as well. This portion of it. If I set aside what I know from the movie, which I can actually kind of do, that he's the one who's actually behind all this, what do I think is going on here? I would think he's genuinely tracking her. Not because he loves her, but because something has been taken from him, and also he enjoys the hunt. Okay? He's blaming Gilder. I might be able to say, well, he's just believing the little evidence Vizzini left. But crucial, I think, would be the whole, wait a minute, Vizzini said that this is a job that they were hired for. What is the job? What is going on here? That, I don't know how much that would catch my mind. It might catch it a lot and be like, what is going on here? Who could it be? Who could it be? Who could it be? Is it Gilder that hired him? Is it somebody else? I don't know. I don't necessarily know beyond that where my mind would go as far as what's going on here. Because it is also... We are at the point with now threads that have been put out are starting to come back together. The first one being Wesley's alive. By the way, I should mention this. In the movie, I know who you are. You're the Dread Pirate Roberts. That whole thing. That's not in here. She hasn't identified... She's not like, you're the Dread Pirate Roberts. So I'm guessing that's going to be in the next portion. I'm just... Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I'm just trying to... Actually, no, I'm not seeing... I'm just trying to skim to see Dread Pirate Roberts, but it's not jumping off the page at me. So, I don't know then when that is... Oh, wait, no, here's a reference to the Revenge. Is the sole property of the Dread Pirate Roberts. Okay, so at some point, and this is Buttercup had just spoken. I don't know if this is a conversation with Wesley or something else. So eventually Dread Pirate Roberts is identified. But it is later. It is later. So it might just be in the conversation. Like when in the swamp, he's explaining how I'm the Dread Pirate Roberts. But your name is Wesley. Well, yeah, it's a title that gets passed down. So maybe when we get to that is when it's explained. I don't know. I am looking forward to that. But yeah, so we get the first there. The next bit, based on what I know from the movie, will be Rugen is a 600 man. So now we're getting Inigo's starting to wrap up there. So that thread is coming over. Fezzik doesn't really have one. The question will be, when is Humperdinck exposed as being behind it all? That I'm curious about. If it is in this chapter, it could only be him and Rugen talking, I think. But otherwise, it would have to be in the next chapter, wouldn't it? Let me just look. Yeah, chapter 6 also has 2 portions to it. And part of that, because I have the label for one of them as catastrophe, that is where, that includes his being killed. So at that point, because Humperdinck does that, absolutely he is exposed. So I wonder if it's going to be in this chapter, in the next part, the final part of this chapter, or in chapter 6. I am looking forward to that because that's a major thread to connect up, to finally start tying up. And will it... Have I been seeing things that are seeds of that? Or am I reading more into it than is actually there? I don't know. I definitely do that, though. It's reading more into it than is there is kind of like I said before. Sometimes, even when you're going to reject thinking through something, there was also thinking through something, it can still be valuable to think through it. And it's reading too much into something is an example of that. It's just, I would just add, reading too much into something can be dangerous because you may start thinking, oh, this is a good idea, that this does make sense, even if say, no, you actually need to reject that. Don't. You're reading way too much into it. And just go with, it's an interesting idea. It's wrong though, but it's an interesting idea to think through that way. An example that would be, although this I actually am fairly confident in, but for this book, how I have described Humperdinck as a grotesque version of Wesley. Like how they both physically are very disciplined, mentally are disciplined as well. But while Wesley's focus is on Buttercup and his love for her, Humperdinck's is on hunting and the thrill of the hunt, the pleasure of killing. So both have made themselves strong, but Wesley has done so to support her and to be attractive to her. That he thought that she prefers a strong body, so he does that. While Humperdinck takes his to the point of being barrel-chested, barrel-thighed, and though not tall, is like 285 pounds, I think it said, and all muscle. It's like, that is not a normal appearance of man, and I think if we would actually see such a person in front of us, they would not be described as attractive. So he's gone to something grotesque, but it is still, they both focused on their physical strength because there is a purpose to that. So as I said, you might be able to see that as a twisted version, a perverted version. That is potentially reading too much in there. I think it's safe to read that much into, but it still is. If Goldman would say, nah, that's not it. That's how he is. That's how Humperdinck is. And it's like, all right, I mean, yeah, reject it, but it still is an interesting way to think about it, because then what other things can you start seeing? That I think is a reasonable thing to do. And now, an hour and 4 minutes. Forgive me. I'll see you next time. And I'm not gonna make any promise. It might be short. It probably won't be. On the bright side, I'm talking a lot. Some of it rambling, but I'm talking a lot because I am enjoying this. I legitimately am enjoying the story. Right? I'm not going through this and just hating it and needing to take time to explain my hatred for it. No, I'm enjoying this. I'm taking the time to explain why I'm enjoying it. And things I like in here. And I'm reading passages from it because I want to share these passages. So this is a good hour versus an angry hour. All right. See you next time.